this fine fellow here is Geordie, and he lives here in Victoria, British Columbia on that vintage wooden motor cruiser, and he's quite tolerant of all the sawdust mess I make as I conduct a full refit on it here. If that's the sort of thing you might be interested in, why don't you stick around and subscribe. Cheers! It's snowing! It's snowing in Victoria, British Columbia. We knew this was coming, but it's still kind of neat to see. We maybe get snow once a year, and from what I understand, this is going to be quite a storm. We're going to have snow for the next 24 hours or so, so we'll see what kind of accumulation we get. Anyway, it's certainly pretty in the meantime. If I haven't mentioned before, or you haven't been following along, I need to make a brow piece for here, which is basically a piece of trim that will cover over this bit of a mess here. And part of what it needs to do is be a dam to keep rainwater from coming off the deck here and pouring down into the cockpit. I want it to be deflected off and off the side of the boat. So it'll be up a little bit and have a bullnose on it, and it'll also lap over with a rabbit joint over the tops of these planks to tidy them up. So it's about 3.5 inches tall. Obviously when it gets to the corner, it's going to have to be a separate piece that's a much sharper radius, which will be a separate piece which I'll join on here. Same deal on the other side, quite a lot of bit shorter on this side, and at the same little radius point. We have a bit of a mess in here where we're going to have to deal with rejoining this coaming, and most importantly, how am I going to seal to this deck? If you look closely, you can see that the deck was fiberglassed at some point. It's chipped and broken and in not very good shape. So I'm going to clean that up by cutting it back a bit, temporarily putting a sealant in here. Probably I'll bed it in butyl tape, but I'm not going to make this a permanent install because I'm going to have to take this up a bit, trim that back and re-glass that section of the deck. All these stanchions are coming off at some point, so there'll be repairs to make here. I just don't want to bite off more than I can chew right now. I want to get these on and relatively sealed so I can take the canopy off. So let's see about getting to that. Okay, so if you're a regular viewer, you'll already know that I have cut the main curved section for the coaming in the cockpit. I did that at the same time I cut for the coaming in the forward companionway. So I do need another little piece for the starboard side. So I'm just going to trace that off here, cut that out of this right here. And again, I'm just going to take the circular saw and zing that out. The remainder of this will be used for the two sharper radius pieces at the corner, which I want to align the grain with. Anyway, we'll get to that. So these two pieces, the port side and the starboard side, will still need some routing to rab it out for the back and bullnose over the top. But I'm not going to get that just yet. I'm going to use the remaining material to make the two tighter radius pieces at the corner. But I'm not going to start with this wood. I'm going to start with something as a template. Yeah. So we have this piece, and somewhere around here we'll have to switch to a piece which is a much sharper radius. So basically this piece of wood is just a curved piece of wood, 3.5 inches tall, and I just really need to know the outside radius, and I can calculate that back down before I start to make a template and figure out how it's going to trim around. So I decided that this piece was going to be 3.5 inches tall so that it would cover these screws and give me a bit of a lip on top. So I'm going to say it's an inch above the deck. It might not be quite, but we'll start with that. So if I want to take an inch above here and scribe a circle, I have to kind of guess where that's going to be, and I can do that by rubbing it around the circle on my knuckle, like that. See there? So that's no good. I just do a couple of tests here. That is darn close right there. So basically I just look at the pivot where my knuckle is pivoting, and that's 7 inches. So I need roughly a 7-inch radius on the outside minus 3.5, so what'll that be? 2.5 on the inside. So I'm going to start with a full 90-degree arc of 7-inch outside radius. Whew, let's go see how that looks. Alright, so if I take the tape and I wrap my finger around it at 7 inches, put my knuckle right down at the pivot point, hang on to the rest of the tape here somehow, Oh, look at that. The pivot is off the edge of the piece of wood. So here, let's grab another piece of wood here. Okay, so right about there, I'm going to say that's my pivot. Let's put the pencil on that and draw an arc. I've got that arc done. It's relatively arbitrary. And then we got to come in 3.5 inches and draw another arc, which is the inside. Good. We've got that through 90 degrees, and that is close enough for me. Let's jigsaw that out and see what we end up with. Just going to draw some arbitrary 45s here. So I have a pretty good idea how far this section has to go. There we go. And the inside. There we go. Now that may not be perfect, but it's close enough to get started. Didn't I say I was going to make a template out of some sacrificial material? Well, alright, hope this is good. Should mention the thumb bandage. Some people might say, oh geez, you finally did yourself in. I did not. This is a little infection under my fingernail. It's got nothing to do with the work I'm doing here. So, no worries. Cheers. I'm going to drag you back and forth to the cockpit every time I make a new scribe, but I don't know if you can see that. I've made a small mark on there and a mark here. Well, that sits over the existing side of the cabin side. Very rough. I'm going to make a little trim out of that with the jigsaw. I'll go back. I'll mark it a little bit back and forth a few times. This is pretty standard stuff. And this should be pretty close. I don't want to get too close until I cut the rabbet and can sit it in properly. We just keep adjusting as we go along. And yes, of course, I should have cut this with a compass. I don't have a compass that'll do 7 inches, and I just know that technique will be just fine for what we're doing, but I understand it's not the professional way to do it. This fitting pretty well. You can see that my side cope there is not badly sloped to the coaming there. A little bit of a gap at the back here. We can tidy that up in time. But I can't get much more accurate until I take the rabbet out to fit around the planking so that it can sit flat and I don't have that gap anymore. So basically I've made a mark here roughly where I have to start to cut at the back side, and I've drawn a line on the front which roughly represents this because it's not a true radius. In other words, anyway, I've also transcribed it to the back. I'm not sure you can see it there, so I'm going to freehand route that on the table. So we got to get the table going. It's snowing. I can't believe it. Look at that. A winter wonderland. Change of plans. Still have the roundover bit installed, and it's still set up, and it would be perfectly set up to do all the roundovers now. It's a bit early, but I'm going to do it that way to save having to reset that up. It means I have to fair the top edges of the various pieces. Anyway, it's pretty straightforward. I'm not sure how much of that I'll show you. So this really just means some gentle sanding along the top and bottom edge, really so that the wheel of the router bit doesn't hit a little bump and make a little nick. So pretty straightforward, just sanding, and you can do without too much sanding. Obviously this is going to get, not obviously, perhaps I haven't already told you, this is going to get a full bullnose on the top. So that's a 3/8 round over on one side and a 3/8 on the other. The back at the bottom will get a big cutout rabbet so that it'll fit over those planks. But the bottom front edge, I haven't decided yet. I may put the same 3/8 round over on it. So seen from the front, that plank will have a round over on the front and a top and a round over on the bottom. Seems more exterior somehow. Anyway, I think that's what I'm going to do. Just back and giving the dock ramp a bit of a shovel because it's quite steep at this tide and it's going to get worse. I can't believe how excited I am about snow. No, really. No, I'm not. Gotta get the rover out. Okay, back to work. What I wouldn't give for some of my old shop tools, like my spindle sander. Anyway, this is good, this is good. Alright, so here we go. Everybody love a bullnose. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Okay, let's keep going here. I may have to move the, yeah, you don't get to see this. What? Wait a second here. Let's do these ones. Now this is precarious. Look at this. I'm going to have to be so careful not to smash that to smithereens there. Now let's see how this goes. Okay, so here's something I gotta think about. If I put the radius on here and I put the radius on there, by the time I put them together, I'd have to be, oh, you know what? I'll just sand it and sand it. That is just so nice. Do I want a radius on the inside? Come on, folks. I'm gonna do it in 2 minutes from now. But if there was some way you could tell me, yeah, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. Okay, no, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it. The reason is, I only have a 3/8 roundover. This is 3/4 stock, so 3/8 roundover would take half of it. I have to cut the rabbet to go over the planks, 3/8 at least, maybe 3/8 strong, which means that I'd be the radius, the root of that radius would end right at the point where the rabbet starts. There'd be no flat to the bottom of this, and I just don't think I'd like that. I'd like a much gentler ease on here. So I think all I'm going to do is, after it's all up and set and done, I'm just going to sand out an 1/8, 3/16 of a reveal radius on there, and I think that'll be just dandy. And that also gives me the opportunity to be a little more careful about closing this all up. Okay, never mind all that. Let's reset this to cut the rabbet. Now, I don't know if I have mentioned yet how much I absolutely despise this router table. I don't want to, you know, dwell on this too long, because I'm sure there are some that won't agree with me. But I used to have what I call the king of router tables, no longer available. But if you get to a garage sale, or if you know where to find one, Lee Valley in Canada, sold under the brand name Veritas, which I think you can get in the States. It was just a 1/4" steel plate, super simple, really great insert setup, really great adjustment setup. Came with a wooden base, you could do different things, but mainly it was just a really great setup with an amazing fence, very well adjustable, nice sliding, you know, T-fence for it to do cross routing and stuff like that. It was awesome. No longer available, probably because they're too expensive. This, I hunted forever to find a decent router table, and this, I hate everything about it. It is a cast aluminum top, so at some point I will ditch these horrific plastic base and somehow make this a little more useful. Anyway, I don't want to rant about it. Let's get this bit out of here and switch to the square cutting bit. Okay, 3/8. Now, as I said, I'm cutting the rabbet 3/8 deep. Okay, so these ones have to be free routed, and so I'll just make a couple of passes, being careful not to take my fingers off in the meantime, especially because it has to go quite deep. This is slightly dangerous, but I'll be careful. So let's get going. First pass, but what am I doing wrong? Oh, yeah, gosh damn it. Okay. Okay, I'm definitely not the king of safety, but this reminds me of something that I always used to tell my guys, my crew, when I was building. When using power tools, that your fingers are going to be nearby, please. Table saw, router, bandsaw, anything. Imagine the work you're doing and something catches and it knocks the wood away. And the pressure that you were applying on the piece of wood, you're now applying onto the bit. So just keep in your mind all the time when you're doing any kind of work with power tools, if the piece of work suddenly disappeared, would your fingers or some other part of your body suddenly be in peril? It just makes me sick thinking of it. Okay, let me carry on. Okay then, so that sits against there and down in there. Oh, I would say that looks pretty nice. I left quite a bit of a gap up in there, but that's okay. Not bad at all. Again, if you were watching last time, be very careful with the router bit. If I'm on this side, I go this way. If I'm on the back side of the router blade, it's turning this way, I must travel in this direction. Bad things happen if you don't get that right. Done! All right. Okay, so what's next? All right, okay, so there it goes. Fits nice, love it, so good. Of course, this is the one for the starboard side. I'm just using it as an example to show what do we do here. Okay, so this piece of the hatch intersects where this would butt up maybe tidally against the door frame. Now, once this is on here, this is 3/8 proud, that's 3/8 proud. This surface and that surface are flush, which is fine. Now, do I cut my new coaming out around the hatch piece, or do I cut the hatch piece for the coaming to fit in which case it is a curve, so there's a bit to it. And I'm going to do the latter. The reason is I'm probably going to rebuild this hatch. As you can see, that certainly the top part of the hatch is a mess, and I actually set up the door in the anticipation of making the hatch taller and making this thing taller. You can see the hatch is almost on top of the door, but it won't close yet. That's because I rebuilt the door long after this hatch was made, and this is a fiberglass mess. So anyway, I'm pretty sure this is going to get replaced. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut it here and let the coaming slide in against the door frame. I'm really concerned with doing a brilliant job of this because, as I said, I'm going to replace this in the not too distant future. Okay, beautiful, 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 beautiful. Nice and flush here. Let's go do the same on the other side. You don't need to watch. All right, so I'm going to call that close enough. I don't know if you can see that little joint in there. So this side is ready to figure out how to put in this piece, and you know, that can't be tough. Okay, this brings us to the next point. How am I going to attach it? Well, I'm going to screw it and bung it, of course, but where? Now, you might say I'll use my old system. In a little bit, space it, whatever. But no, I'd like them to line up with the center of the planks, if that's going to work. Okay, after giving it some more thought, I've figured it out. I'm going to put them in these two bays, this one, this one, this one, and then instead of at 45, because gets into a mess here, I'm going to go at 30 degrees and it's 60 degrees, and the other one's up there. I like it. Now I just gotta line it all up. Close to there. Now I'll calculate the 30 and the 60 inside. Okay. Alright, so to mark this off at 30 and 60, I'll just sit it in here against this corner, use my speed square, and set its pivot point directly above that. You know, this is all just being eyed. And mark off my degrees over here. So what do we got here? We got 25 and 35. We got 30 degrees right there. So there's 30 degrees. I'd have to say it would take a pretty keen eye to say that that wasn't right on. And we'll mark that one. Okay, so now we have the radial lines. And amazingly enough, just grabbed a piece of wood, and the two offsets I need are exactly the width of this and the length of it. And I'll just drill these out. And this piece can join all of these already produced. All right, let's get a couple of these screwed on. Nice, 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 nice. I'm going to leave that side for now. Let's go do the other side. Beautiful. There we go. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm going to call that a success. I really, really, really like it. I don't know if you can hear me with all this wind right now. The storm is starting to pick up, so I'm going to call that a day. And well, you know what that means, don't you? And after a bit of a Friday tidy up, it is definitely time for a beer. And this week, I really have a special treat for you. One of my absolute favorites. This is Fat Tug, brewed by Driftwood, just a few miles from here. This is legendary in this part of the world. Awesome, awesome labels that Driftwood puts on these. Fat Tug is pretty much a benchmark for what they call the Pacific Northwest style IPA, India Pale Ale. It is hoppy. It is extremely hoppy, with notes, some citrus notes, certainly grapefruit. It is very, very floral. It is a fantastic drinking beer, no doubt about it. It's 7%, and I gotta tell you, it feels like 20. Down 2 of these bombers in an evening, and you're messed up. So drink with caution. Don't know what it is that does that. Absolutely fantastic beverage. Let's pour it. Again, thanks to my buddy Mike for the super bottle opener. Oh, I love to see that gas pouring off there. It's a really nice color. You can pour just a little bit of a head on it, but not much. There we go. Absolutely fabulous. Again, oh, just so much grapefruit, so much other floral stuff in there going on. Really, really great. Cheers. Oh God, I'm in the pub. Okay, I want to take advantage of this particular opportunity to thank a few people. Those people are my first round of patrons, both from Patreon and from PayPal. So just in this last week, Patrick Mornan, Case Klumper, Mr. and Mrs. Carberry, Jim Rosser, Stephen Gifford, and Dave Trainer all joined up on Patreon. I'm so grateful. And as well as Paul Beglane joined up on PayPal. So thank you very much to all of you, and cheers. Fabulous. See you next week.